was almost going to put on our prayer list a prayer that my neighbors had shot all their fireworks off, because last night they just kept popping and popping and popping. I don't know if anybody would join me in that, but it seemed, I really hope they ran out, because they had, I think they've got days worth. So anyway, and if any of y'all got pets, y'all know that's just quite another headache to deal with. I don't know, Tammy, do goats respond to fireworks?
Mine didn't. My dogs would, but no, mine didn't.
Okay. I knew dogs did. I didn't know about goats. So let's, anyways. When I was thinking about the sermon today, starting a new year and all, one of the things that I was kind of like reflecting back, and I was thinking about back when I was 19 years old, and the kind of person I was, and what was going on in my life, and just kind of, thinking along those kind of lines. Where were you when you were 19 years old? Were you still living at home? What were you doing? Were you in college? Were you off at work doing something else? Where were you when you were 19 years old? Mike?
College.
You were in college? Okay. North Carolina, you were already in nursing? No?
When I was in college, I was in.
Okay. What else?
Lovely tropical paradise called Vietnam.
Oh. I don't know if it's often described that way. You let me in because you said, look, I was like, is he talking about Hawaii or the That's quite a different experience, yeah. What else comes to mind? Shelnut, when you were 19, were you already in college?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'd already started college. Jennifer, what about you?
Working.
Working? Okay. Were you living at home? Okay, living at home and working. Okay. Craig, what about you?
Living at home and working.
Okay, that was your thing. Okay. Dennis?
Yep, living at home and working.
And living at home and working. Okay. I was doing a little bit of that. I was living at home, working, and going to school. So that's kind of what I was juggling. And anyways, it was when I was 19 years old, 1 month before I turned 20, that I came to Christ. And I had grown up in a Christian home. Some of you have heard me say this. I grew up in a Christian home, and I had checked all the boxes. Go to Sunday school, check. Went to VBS, check. Went to youth group, check. Went on Sunday night, check. Served in the church, check. I checked all the boxes. I was a part of the church community in a lot of ways. But I wasn't a Christian. And that didn't happen until, like I said, 1 month before I turned 20. And here's the thing. My upbringing had taught me about the faith. But my upbringing did not teach me how to live the faith. And so consequently, after I became a Christian, I graduated, ended up coming to UGA, and my life was a mess. Because I did not know how to live the faith. Like I said, I checked all the boxes. And here's the thing. I could have told you, well, a Christian needs to pray. And a Christian needs to read their Bible. And a Christian needs to serve in church. And a Christian needs to give, be generous. And a Christian needs to, go to Bible study and attend. I could have told you all these things. But Jesus talked about abiding in Him. And Jesus talked about walking in the light. And Jesus talked about following Him. And I saw that, and I saw the things I knew about the faith, and I didn't make the connection. The difference is that those things like prayer and studying God's Word and being in fellowship and serving and all these other stuff, those are all pillars. Those are all pillars. Those are things that are going to help you grow and mature and build up your faith. But it's not the foundation. And that's what I was missing. That's what I didn't understand. I didn't know about the foundation. And that's what Jesus was talking about. that's why it was a mess. And so that's what I want to talk to us this morning. Because as you start a new year, you need a strong foundation. You need the right foundation. And you may have confused the things of the faith, the spiritual disciplines, the things that God uses to build up our faith and to grow it and mature it. You may have confused those with the foundation. And if you do that, you're in trouble. Because anybody who's ever spent any time around building and homes and construction knows it all depends on the foundation. It all depends on the foundation. And so that's where I want to put our focus this morning. So if you look at your bulletin, our focus this morning is going to be the foundation we build on. The foundation we build on. That's our focus this morning. The foundation we build on. Say that with me. The foundation we build on. One more time. The foundation we build on. Because it's very easy to confuse those two things I talked about. And I did it for quite a long time. When we talk about the foundation we build on, I want us to go in the New Testament to the book of Romans. The book of Romans. So turn in your New Testament. You want to get on your phone or tablet or grab a hard copy Bible or one in the pew. Go with me to the New Testament book of Romans. Now, who wrote the book of Romans? Paul. That's right. The Apostle Paul. Paul wrote the book of Romans, and it's kind of easy to find because in the New Testament, it's the largest thing he wrote. It really stands out. And it has an interesting backstory to it because Paul had never been to Rome. And so he's writing to a church in Rome that he had never been to. But he was making plans to visit there. And he was going to do ministry there. And this is probably the most dangerous thing that he had ever attempted as far as his travels go, because Rome was the seat of the Roman Empire. It was the seat of the government. It was the seat of power. It was the seat of a lot of brutality. It's in Rome that they had the Colosseum where Christians died and fed to lions and wild animals. And Paul was wanting to go there. So Paul wants to go there, and he's got a big group of friends, and you can kind of see that near the end of that book. You can see his long list of people he wants you to say hi to, basically, and greet this person and greet this person. Because he's got all these friends that are going to be there in ministry working with him. So he's got a big support team, but he's never been there. But he's looking forward to going. And so he writes the book of Romans, this longest letter. Now, when you start flipping the pages and see how many chapters are in it, understand, this really stood out. This was a strange anomaly. Because most letters written during this time were about the size of a postcard. The little scroll would just, be yay big. Paul writes this thing that looks like a book out of the Old Testament or something. It's so big for a letter. So it must have just really caught everybody's attention when they're meeting in these house churches and stuff, and somebody walks in going, I got a letter from Paul. And it's all they can do to carry it. Well, what's Paul telling us? What did he do? We've heard about Paul. What is this thing? So it really would have stood out as something very unique just because of the size of it. And what Paul is doing, because it doesn't look like a regular letter, Paul is basically going to trace this history in the letter of God's relationship with man. And how it has unfolded and where man has gone astray and how God is reaching out to him and the covenant and Abraham and the whole history of Israel. He goes on this very long, detailed, theological, doctrinal history. And if you've read Romans, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But those are deep weeds at times. So he writes this very long thing, but then in Romans chapter 12, he shifts. And he goes from just telling you everything that God has done in history and his working through covenants and different people in Israel. He goes from all of that, then he shifts gears, and he now starts talking about you. He starts talking about us. He starts talking about, okay, now that you know all this stuff, now that you're aware of all this stuff, now that you know this part is true, you got some perspective, this is how you live it. This is how you respond. This is how you react to it. He's basically saying, this is all true, this is what God has done, this is who God is, this is what he's accomplished through Christ. Now, it's your move. The ball's in your court. What do you do? How do you do that? So if you've got Romans 12, you don't have to go far. Because we're going to start where Paul starts in this big explanation. And if it looks familiar, you go, wow, didn't I just read that? Yes, you did. That was in the bulletin. It says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy. He's like, okay, you already know about God's mercy. You got some perspective on it. I've told you all about it. You understand what Christ has done. In view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as living sacrifices. Offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. This is your act of worship. To offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. Because that is the right way to worship. See, that's the foundation. That's what you build on. All the time you spend in Bible study, all the time you spend in prayer, all the time that you may serve or attend or be in fellowship or give, all that is pillars from that foundation of worship. Because you have already offered yourself, your whole body, as a living sacrifice to God. Now, see the imagery. You present a living sacrifice. You're taking the role of a priest who presents sacrifices. And this would not have been a unique thing. You know, in Rome they offered sacrifices. In Israel they offered sacrifices. This was something the culture was very familiar with. So when he spoke in this language, everybody had the right picture in mind. You present the living sacrifice. You as a priest are in that role. And you are the living sacrifice. You're the priest, and you're what's being offered to God. You're both. You see that? See the picture he's drawing for us? You're both. And that's an amazing picture to have us both in there at once. But that's not unique, is it? Who also was a priest offering a living sacrifice? Who else? Jesus. Jesus, Hebrews chapter 4. He talks about how he offers himself. He takes on a priestly role. And so what he's calling us to do is to be like Christ. To present the sacrifice that you are to God. Voluntarily. Voluntarily. Because that is what we mean I worship. That is your worship. To offer yourself to God as a sacrifice. Your whole body. All that your whole self is, you give it to God. That's the foundation you build on your worship. That's what everything grows from. Now, everything else has to come from it. All those spiritual disciplines that I talked about, that's not this. Because you can mistake that and not do this. You can go to a prayer meeting. You can read your Bible. There are professors at the University of Georgia who know the Bible better than any pastor I've ever known. They know long passages that they've committed to memory because they've studied it in a very academic way. They see it as a historical, literary document of great importance. But that's it. And that does not equate to worship. And you can serve in church. You can show up and you can get a role and take on some responsibility, and it's yours. But that's not worship. Those are pillars. Those are spiritual disciplines that God will use to grow your faith. But you got to have the foundation. Because all that can just be activity. It can just be activity. That's the foundation. That's what you're called to do. You are called to worship. Now that's inside. That's what we're familiar with. But the outside world, they're just as misguided about this as we can be, because what they end up doing, they think, well, a Christian means that you're a decent person, that you're nice, or maybe you try to help people, and that's what they think maybe the Christian faith is. You can do a lot of nice things, and you can do a lot of good things, and you can go join a charity out there. But that doesn't necessarily equate to worship. What worship is you are a living sacrifice. That's what worship is. That's what worship is. Now, I'll be Exhibit A on this. Because, like I said, I got experience. Without worship, without this as your foundation, you'll look at those spiritual disciplines of serving, of attending, of being in fellowship, or maybe being in a Bible study, or maybe reading your Bible, or maybe prayer, or maybe giving generously. You'll look at all those spiritual disciplines, and you know what you'll do if this isn't your foundation? You will pick and choose what you want to do. What fits your preference? What do I like? And you'll rationalize it all away. It's like a buffet. I really like prayer meeting, but I don't like reading this Bible as much. So I'm not. I like attending church. Well, maybe I don't. And so I don't do it so much. I like doing attending church, but I don't want to serve. I don't want them to ask me to help in any way or do anything or play a role. It's my buffet. And I get to choose what I do with my buffet. It's my preferences. It's my opinion. I rationalize it away. And you'll do that, just like I did. And you'll fall into sin because it's not built on worship. You're not going, God, I'm sacrificed to you. What are we doing in this world? How do I play a part? I'm yours. See, if that's your mindset, if you've got the right foundation, if you're worshiping, then you don't buffet church. You don't go, well, I like this, but I'm not so fond of that. I'm really comfortable here, but this part's inconvenient. And I'm a busy person. You don't buffet it when your foundation is worship. You don't rationalize it away. I don't have time for that. Oh, but I do have time for that. Oh, I like reading the Bible. The Bible just is like, it just comes alive. I just drawn to it. But I'm only going to attend so-and-so often. I'm only going to be in fellowship so-and-so often. Prayer's never really been a great thing for me. See, you will do that, because I did it. Like I said, I'm Exhibit A. You will do that if this isn't your foundation. You will buffet-style life. When there's something that has a Christian connotation to it, instead of going, I'm a living sacrifice to God, you'll go, let me see if I want to do that. Let me see if I want to participate. Let me see if I like that. And you know what? You will find every excuse in the world to justify your actions. And when you run out of excuses, the enemy will give you some more. When you burned up all of those excuses that you've come up for not doing this, but doing more of that, or not so much of this, or none of that, when you burned up all of those excuses, the enemy will give you more. Because he's on that side of things. He's on that side of things. That's what he wants to do. He wants to distract you. But when we worship, that becomes our foundation. And everything else builds on that. And this isn't, don't get me wrong, this isn't a passive thing. This isn't like, oh, whatever, okay, I'm a living sacrifice, okay, whatever, God. No, it's more like Isaiah, when God tells him, who am I going to send for this purpose and mission? And Isaiah says, send me. Right here. You don't have to look any further. God, you need somebody to send. I'm right here. It's not a passive thing. Think about it like this. And you'll recognize this from the Lord's Prayer and Christ's prayer in Gethsemane. That's what being a living sacrifice says to God. Thy will be done. Thy will be done. It's from the Lord's Prayer and Christ praying in Gethsemane on the night he was arrested. Thy will be done. Not my will. I got preferences. I got opinions. I got priorities of my own. But when you're a living sacrifice, you're saying to God, thy will be done. Your will, not mine. I'm a living sacrifice. I've presented you as a priest. I presented myself to you willingly, voluntarily. Thy will be done. That's the foundation you have to build on. To say to God this year and every day, and probably if you're like me, more than one time a day. God, I got preferences, and this is inconvenient, and I got other things on my mind, and I've got other priorities, but look, thy will be done. It's what you want. You're in charge. Thy will be done. Like I said, it's not a passive thing. It's like drawing a circle on the ground and saying, God, everything in that circle 100% is committed to you. Thy will be done. And then you step into that circle. You say, thy will be done. Let's go. Whatever you want me to do. Whatever's going to build my faith, whatever's going to strengthen my faith, whatever's going to mature me and help me to be a disciple. I'm here in the circle. Lord, do it. I'm a living sacrifice. That's the foundation that you have to build on. It all has to be built on worship. Saying to God, thy will be done. And then those spiritual disciplines don't become buffets anymore. Don't become picking and choosing. They become on your foundation of worship. Because that's what we're called to do. That's what you're made to do. That's what you were made. That's what I'm made to do. We're made to worship. We're made to offer ourselves to God. And to say to Him, as Christ did, as He taught us in the Lord's Prayer, to say, thy will be done. And that's what you need to start this year doing. Every day. And next year. And if the Lord tarries His return, then following year. Because everything else is not foundation. This is foundation. Because only He is worthy of praise and honor and glory and devotion and worship. So, as the music plays, that's what I want to put on your heart this morning. That's what we're called to do. That is the foundation.